Flag. What's that fluttering in a breeze? It's just a piece of cloth that brings a nation to its knees. What's that unfurling from a pole? It's just a piece of cloth that makes the guts of men grow bold. What's that rising over a tent? It's just a piece of cloth that dares the coward to relent. What's that flying across a field? It's just a piece of cloth that will outlive the blood you bleed. How can I possess such a cloth? Just ask for a flag, my friend, then blind your conscience to the end.
We've heard Agard read the poem. We're going to try to work through it to see how we can annotate it for structural and linguistic features that would help us identify things that we need to write about for the exam. So when I read Flag, it seems like a pretty simple poem, and it's really divided in each stanza. There's 1, 2, 3, 4. There seem to be 5 stanzas, and they're broken up into questions and answers. Each stanza is made up of 3 lines, and the second line and the first 4 stanzas are repeated. It's just a piece of cloth. What I want you to notice is the rhyme scheme, that the first line rhymes with the third line. Except in the last stanza, where there is a rhyming couplet, which is 2 lines rhyming. Other things of note are the syllable count. The syllable count runs from 8 syllables, what's that fluttering in a breeze, to 6, it's just a piece of cloth, to 8 again, that brings a nation to its knees. So there's a quite regular structure here. So the syllables for each stanza go 8, 6, 8. These are some of the stylistic features of this text. I think a confusing thing here you might notice is the rhyme between field and bleed. That might not be a full rhyme, actually. We might want to bring that into question. I don't know what to do with that. There is a repetition of the E, field, bleed. It's almost a rhyme. So, well, let's put it down for now, and we'll try to think about maybe this is a half rhyme or close rhyme. Okay, now that we've identified the major kind of form and structural issues, let's try to read the poem for meaning. So, as I noted, that structurally the poem is broken up into questions and answers. A narrator asks a question, what's that fluttering in a breeze? It's just a piece of cloth that brings a nation to its knees. The rhyme creates this kind of almost childish, naive kind of questioning about flags. Now, flags are usually considered, I mean, if you think about the idea of a flag, some of the things associated with it are nationhood. You know, people are often very pride. They're filled with a sense of pride over their country. This poem is trying to subvert that. It's trying to be sarcastic about that. And we know it's sarcastic, it's because of this line. It's just a piece of cloth. There's no symbolic meaning to this. It's just actually a piece of cloth, is what the poem seems to be saying. However, in the third line, it is noting that even though it is a piece of cloth, and that is kind of sarcastic, it's still able to bring people to their knees. What else does this piece of cloth have the power to do? It has the power to make men in particular, feel really brave. Here we can think of war. When it's risen over a tent, I think that's, again, an implication of going to war. It also has the ability to make cowards relent, relent means to kind of give up something harsh. So in addition to making people feel bold, it's able to make cowards let go. In the fourth stanza, there's a greater suggestion that what people do for flags might seem a bit more negative. So that thing that's flying across the field isn't just it's a piece of cloth, but it's going to outlive the blood you bleed. Why are people bleeding? Again, we might see people bleeding because of war, and usually people will fight for their nations, and nations are represented in flags, and the blood you're bleeding for them is going to leave you dead. But this idea of the flag continues to exist. And in the last stanza, there comes a kind of conclusion. So there's a series of questions, and asking what is it, what is it, what is it, and finally, the last stanza asks, how can I own this? How can I possess this thing? And I think the poet quite sarcastically answers, oh, all you have to do is ask for a flag. Now, this is the first time this object has been named. All you got to do to get this thing that makes men fall to their knees, makes them feel good, gets cowards to back down, this thing that's going to outlast the blood that you're bleeding on the ground. All you got to do to get this is ask for a flag. And then blind your conscience to the end. Now, we already talked about the couplet in the last two lines. That gives this poem a sense of finality. It makes the poem come to an ending. But these last lines are kind of strange. What does it mean to blind your conscience to the end? I know that I can ask for this thing called a flag, but then what is this next thing I have to do? Now we have to ask, okay, well, what is our conscience? Okay, your conscience is the thing that usually gives you the ability to tell right from wrong. Hope you can see this still. And what Agard is suggesting, or the narrator of the poem is suggesting, is to get this magical object, all you've got to do is ask for a flag, yeah? The next thing you have to do is take away your ability to tell right from wrong. And the suggestion here is that the flag is an object that puts people in situations where they do things for the flag and not for their own conscience. And so I think that this is a poem that is anti-war because it's asking us, well, do we want to give up our conscience for an object like this, something that's just a piece of cloth, or do we want to keep our own conscience and do the thing that we think is correct? And in this way, this poem really questions the symbolism of patriotism, of love of country, and of all the things associated with